Shalom, men. If we'd all please stand. Great and awesome Heavenly Father, Yahweh, this is Khan Nathaniel Yael Hawkins asking permission to come before your wonderful throne of mercy, along with all of your men whom you have called forward in these last days to glorify your name in your house. All of us being seed of the last days, anointed witness, our pastor and overseer, Yisrayl Abel Hawkins, and through Yahshua Messiah, the high priest over the house of Yahweh and soon coming King. Father, we do thank you and praise you that you've given us this opportunity to come before you, Father Yahweh, to learn of your ways, to rehearse the words of the great witness. And we do pray that you would continue to guide and direct all of your people, Father. And it's through Yahshua Messiah's name we do pray. Hallelujah, Yahweh. Praise Yahweh. Everyone may be seated. Or all of the seed of Yisrael may be planted. If somebody could use that, put it on a t-shirt or something. Make sure all proceeds go to the house of Yahweh. Praise Yahweh. Okay, so we're going to be in chapter 28 of the second book of Yisrael, the chosen branch. And the heading is, the teachers of Babylon who threatened to kill Jeremiah for speaking the laws of Yahweh are now called Catholic, who came from the Holy Roman Empire, number 8. And it says the word race is a deceptive word. The word Gentile is a deceptive word. The best word to describe a heathen would be disbeliever or unbeliever. Okay? So a disbeliever or unbeliever. And really, you know, everybody falls under the category of an unbeliever. And, you know, the reason why is that we all, just like the great witness taught us, there's only one family on the face of the earth. You know, there's only one family on the face of the earth. All of us came from Noah's lineage, you know, all of us, and there are none left outside of the seed or the lineage of Abraham. Remember, those who keep the laws of Yahweh and stand up for Yahweh, you know, though we have a little strength, those are the seed. Those are the seed of Abraham. Okay? But we all fall under the huge umbrella of being the descendants or of the lineage of Abraham. Okay, but you know, if you remember these teachings, I mean, these were some and they are, not that they were, but they are some very awesome teachings. And you know, it's something that you won't find in the world. These teachings, the way that the great witness has been inspired by Yahshua Messiah to bring everything together, you know, to be able to bring across this teaching in a manner that nobody else on the face of the earth could possibly even dream about bringing across, is something that's very noteworthy and worthy of praise to Yahweh for, you know, for setting a great high priest over the house of Yahweh, and then giving us the great witness who has devoted his whole life to the keeping and the teaching, the preaching and the publishing of Yahweh's law. So let's give him a round of applause. He definitely deserves a round of applause each and every time when we see him come before us to speak, because you know, his face does shine like Yahweh's face does shine. And just in case you're wondering, if you remember, Pastor said that Yahweh's duty is to protect the house of Yahweh. Yahshua Messiah has been given the commission of inspiring and seeing this work through this tribulation. And then, of course, the witness's duty is to be the trumpet who will give the call forward the people, teach the people in true health according to Yahweh's laws, as inspired by Yahshua Messiah, who receives his directives from Father Yahweh. So, beginning on page 283, we'll go into the sermon. And remember, you know, the word race is a deceptive word, you know, because there's only one race. There may be different stocks, as Pastor has said before, but there's only one race, the human race, and we all are fitly joined together. Praise Yahweh. And that's what Pastor said. You know, you look up that word fitly, it really gives you a greater understanding. And the word Gentile is deceptive. And to best describe a heathen, of which they are, you know, the people who do not follow the ways of Yahweh, to best describe a heathen would be a disbeliever or an unbeliever. Okay, so in verse 1 it says, "Shalom everyone, I'm glad all of you are here today. I was actually afraid that this cold might keep some of you away. You may be seated. May the peace of Yahweh," praise Yahweh, "may the peace of Yahweh be with each and every one of you. The cold, I feared that some would miss, but it doesn't look like it. It looks like a crowd is growing, like the crowd is growing, like the people of Yahweh are growing." And you know, that makes me think of one of the prayers that King David offered up to Yahweh. He said, "Yahweh, allow me to grow as your spirit grows. Allow me to grow as your spirit grows." And when he asked that of Yahweh, that meant, Yahweh, let me grow as your house grows. You know, because remember, a word against the spirit of Yahweh, spirit which is holy of Yahweh, will not be forgiven. Well, that's a word against the work of Yahweh. Any word against the work of Yahweh, you know, it won't be forgiven. Now, of course, that's you know, there's more to that understanding, but that's what it is. That's what Yahweh shows. That's what Yahshua Messiah said. A word against this work will not be forgiven. Anyone who turns in hatred and in opposition to the last day's anointed witness and continues and persists in their rebellion, they don't have what it takes to bring forth fruits that befit repentance. Okay, so that's a quick definition of even that major teaching that Yahweh has allowed to come forward in Yahweh's house. Okay, so it says, the crowd is growing. Praise Yahweh. I want to show you how the Abelin Reporter News is advertising for us weekly. Their website, reporternews.com, and then down here it says, we got everything you need to keep up to date with local news. And here it is, right here, shown on the monitor, the House of Yahweh, the 7th Malach, Yisrayl Hawkins. And if you remember, when I had this opportunity to speak last, I had mentioned that, you know, at that specific time, that was the time when the letters to the 3 counties was going out, and we were working feverishly and hard, you know, getting this letter prepared, this letter that Pastor had written, getting it prepared, you know, licking, sticking, folding, bending, you know, and putting all the envelopes together in order to ship them out, enough to go throughout all 3 counties. And, you know, we, by the sweat of our brow and by the blood of our fingertips, paper cuts and everything, we got it out. And then Yahweh came with this advertisement because he's like, you know what, you guys did a great job, but you didn't let them see the face of the one who wrote the letter. You know, so I think it's even up until just recently here, probably within the last few months, that they actually stopped that specific picture from being in that publication for the Reporter News. But you can see how Yahweh rewards the work of his chosen. Yahweh will reward those who stand up for him and continue in his ways. Okay, so let's continue. It says, the 7th Malach, they got my picture there and everything. I didn't know. He says, I didn't know they was that proud of us. You know, I'm glad to see they're that proud of us. So that, see that? Wow. And then Pastor laughs and everybody applauds. It says, they didn't even realize that probably. They thought they were doing that for their own benefit or for their benefit. See, we bring you breaking news about the house of Yahweh. And so they put the face of the great witness. It's just like when Satan inspired Yahweh Iscariot to betray Yahshua Messiah, and then, he was taken and was about to be killed, and she realized, like, oh wait, she went back to the books like, oh no, stop them. And so Yahweh Iscariot tried to come back and bring back the money to the priests, and the priests were like, we have nothing to do with that. That's blood money now. So they didn't take it into the treasury of the house of Yahweh. Remember, they took it to a different portion. What was it? Yes. Okay, so in the same way, she was probably like, oh no, man, why did I put his face all over that publication? We didn't even have to, work for that. That was a great blessing from Father Yahweh. Okay, so verse 3, he says, okay, FEMA is telling everyone to get ready, and here's more on this week also. On it this week also. Okay, so FEMA's telling everyone to get ready, and here's more on it this week also. Encouraging individuals to resolve to be ready. Washington. Within the new year approaching, the Department of Homeland Security Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, Ready campaign is reminding Americans to resolve to be ready. In 2010, Resolve to be Ready, an annual initiative encouraging individual families, businesses, communities to take preparedness, to make preparedness a part of their New Year's resolution. So always be ready. Now they started pushing that in 2010. I figured they probably guessed that, by the time everything really takes off, people won't be ready, and they're probably banking that a lot of people won't be ready and a lot of people won't die. A lot of people will die in order to accomplish that population reduction. Okay, because remember, Planned Parenthood is about population reduction. It's not about planning out your future, making sure that your family is healthy and everything. It's not about that. Planned Parenthood is actually about reducing the population. And in the same way, it seems like the Federal Emergency Management Agency should be about, preparing the people and getting them ready. But no, that's not the plan of FEMA. I'd like for the leaders, at least in the House of Yahweh, to write down some numbers here, websites, and so forth, and see what they say. Verse 4, it says, being ready for emergencies can be an easy New Year's resolution to keep by following the Ready campaign's 3 simple steps. Number 1, get an emergency supply kit, which won't last long, and if that's all they're telling you, if that's all they're telling them, that seems to be what they're telling them. All they're telling them. Okay, so he's pretty much saying the same thing, that they're only telling them to get a kit together, which won't last all that long. Get an emergency supply kit. It won't last. How long will that last? Well, maybe one day, so he along the same lines there. Verse 5, and this is number 2, it says, make a family emergency plan. And I think they're talking about communicating with one another. Your kinfolk, having a way to communicate with them. Number 3, it says, be informed about the types of emergency and appropriate responses. And it talks about the emergency kit when you get without power. Talking about gas and electric. Now, one of the things that the great witness had mentioned just this past feast of of trumpets, the Sabbath of trumpets, he said that we need to practice going back to basics. And if you remember previously, he said, start practicing bathing in two cups of water. You know, and I know that sounds like a hardship, and what kind of dictator would make his people bathe in 2 cups of water? How could he? How could he? Can't be a man of Yahweh. There's no way he's a man of Yahweh. What if he told you to lap like a dog instead of drinking out of a cup? Oh, yeah, praise Yahweh. Lap like a dog, you know. But yeah, 2 cups of water. It's worth it practicing it. You know, the world is trying to encourage their people, although it's a little bit too late. I mean, the House of Yahweh has been preparing for this time period right here for the past 40 plus years. You know, and it's really amazing the type of work that it takes in order to come out from among her, it may enable us to come out from Babylon. You know, it's a great work. We're still working on it 40 years later. You know, but of course, all of these things are through inspiration of Yahweh. Definitely through inspiration of Yahweh. Okay, so gas and electric, okay? If this winter, if you have the opportunity, try, practice cooking on your wood-burning stoves. You know, practice warming up your water, your 2 cups of water. Make sure it doesn't evaporate to like 1.5 cups or 1 cup. But just try, bathing, heating up your water on your wood-burning stove. Okay, so verse 6, it says, I know I've talked about this before, told you really need to practice this. If you could just maybe shut off your electricity off one day, and don't let your food ruin. Okay, don't let the meat in the refrigerator, in the freezer, go to waste. But it says, but shut the electricity off for one day. One day it won't ruin after one day, but you'll have a great idea of what it takes, to keep yourself going when you don't have the luxury of electricity. Luxury of electricity, I like that. It says, but shut your electricity off for one day and see what it takes. It takes some changing, but you certainly can do it. He believes that we could do it. He knows that we can do it because he has done it himself. He knows what it takes in order to all of the things that the Institutes of Nimrod that have taught us that it's mandatory that we need. You have to get a house with two car garage. That's it. Make sure you have a plasma screen TV in every room. I do construction, and I see a lot of these things. You would be amazed at what people are spending their time and their money on right now. And they're making sure that they are getting their entertainment. They're making sure that they can remain as drunk as they could possibly be. Entertainment promotes drunkenness. Remember what Pastor was reading about the Facebook and MySpace. These things, we have to guard, and Pastor was pointing toward the children, making sure that the children do not have the opportunity to surf these things unchaperoned. Because we are allowing them to see the things that will help them to walk in a way that's not according to the standard of Yahweh. Okay, but this is what the people are doing. They're making sure that their children have plasma screen. As a matter of fact, I think it was one governmental agency. I remember Pastor mentioning that they said it's recommended for a child to have a certain amount of television watching throughout the week. And if they're not meeting that requirement, then that means that you're abusing your child. You're abusing your child by not letting them watch SpongeBob. But then now, SpongeBob SquarePants. But now they came out with scientific evidence that SpongeBob SquarePants corrupts the mind of your children. So what do you, I mean, that must be Babylon. It's like, tell them to watch TV, but don't let them watch that TV. You know, the best thing going on television right now is the House of Yahweh, the work of Yahweh, the great witness. The best thing going on the internet, on Facebook, on MySpace is the House of Yahweh, the great witness, pushing this message. You know, he still has his Facebook account, and he's pushing it. Yisrayl Abel Hawkins. Okay. So verse 6, it says, I've been talking about this. You know, he that's what he said. He said, don't let your food ruin. Let's go down to verse 7. It says, new gods are coming up daily now. The article now, and this article, strain of new drug-resistant bacteria coming from the hospitals. This new study reports a surge in drug-resistant strain of dangerous type bacteria in the U.S. hospitals called Acinetobacter. I'm saying it wrong. Acinetobacter, yeah, something like that. That's one of those gods, you know, that's like one of those Greek gods that they pray to. You can't even pronounce their name. But these are the new gods come up. These are the ones that are worshipped by the pharmaceutical industry. You know, vaccination, I bet you the vaccination for this thing has it in it. It has the very same thing in it. Or in a dormant form that'll wake up later like a genie out of a bottle and destroy you. Okay? So it says, now that's the way you pronounce it. Okay, I guess, you know. But you pronounce it faster. Okay, so Pastor had a hard time with it too. It says, but that's the way it's pronounced. Okay, here it is. He breaks it down. Then Bacter. Yeah, you sin and then you turn back to her. You don't turn to Yahweh when you sin, right? Okay. Okay, it says, and that's exactly what it is. It's a strike of sin against the people. This God came up, had to have come through some performing of some sin. You know, it's a result of performing one sin or another. And they're trying to find a way to, you know, cover up the curse. Remember what the ziggurats are for? Who remembers what the ziggurats are for? Don't blurt out the answer, but if you remember. Ziggurats. Okay, ziggurats on top of the churches. Not cigarettes, ziggurats, right? They're there to deflect the wrath of God. That mean Old Testament God that nobody knows nor can pronounce his name. But if you don't know it, you wouldn't even be able to pronounce it anyway, so don't worry about trying to figure it out. You know, but that's what it is. They try to turn away the curse. These pharmaceutical industries are just like that ziggurat on top of the church, trying to turn away the curse that Yahweh warned them against. It's not Yahweh bringing the curse. Yahweh warned you against it. Don't partake in this. If you partake in this, then you're opening yourself up to the curses that come from that lifestyle. You know, you remember the saying, you are what you eat, right? Well, if you eat a pig, you become a pig, and you have about the same life expectancy, right? Only, like, you know, but you're still a human, so you got to, like, meet it in the middle. So now it's down to, like, 70 years. You know, we used to have, like, 800, 900 years. But then we started eating crab and shellfish, and those things only, like, those things only have a life expectancy of, I don't know how long. A crab's life expectancy probably, like, 2 weeks or something. You know, so you are what you eat. So you start eating crab, you start becoming a crab. But people have like a whole zoo inside of them now. They want to eat monkeys, they want to eat crawdads. I didn't know what a crawdad was till I came to Texas anyway. I thought it was just like a baby lobster or something. You know, but they want to eat, yes, even, you know, there was an individual who used to go through the town and picking up all the roadkill, and he would just throw it in a big pot and cook it up, whatever it was. It's like, how do you, like, even, okay, fine, you didn't find a possum dead on the road, but how do you go hunt down a possum and say, yeah, I want to eat that thing? And that thing's turning around at you, hissing and looking all greasy, and like, how do you eat that though? Like, yummy, you know? It doesn't make any sense, but you are what you eat. And all of these things that you see going on now, the cancer, okay? Remember, fire purifies, right? So, okay, so fire purifies, and so you go out into the sun, spend a little bit of time in the sun. Sun starts purifying your body, starts pulling that cancer that you got from eating pork. It starts pulling it forward, right? Trying to get it out of the body. Starts getting it over to the skin, and then it's like, oh no, you have melanoma. You must have got it from the sun that purifies. Then all of a sudden, the sun becomes the main problem. You know, I mean, it's surprising, you know, it's amazing that they didn't think about blotting out the sun for that purpose before the nuclear bombs drop on them. You know, we got to stop this melanoma. Let's blot out the sun. But that's what they've been doing. They've been putting that sunscreen on you that, you know, hurts more than it helps. You know, so all of these things, it goes right in with this new disease, this new God that has come up, okay? And verse 8, it says, it strikes patients in intensive care units. So the place where you're supposed to be getting like the most intense care is the place where you're in the most intense danger. You know, one of my family members just went under the knife for a brain tumor, wound up catching a viral infection due to the operation. You know, so these are the places that, you know, the Pharisees and the Sadducees and all of them, they're supposed to be able to save us. You know, I had to drive by one of the hospitals, and I tell you, the hospitals, man, they look like huge castles. I was like, man, that place looks like a huge castle, you know, with all of its subjects and minions inside of it, moaning and groaning in the dungeons of the ER room. Help, please get me out of here, you know, but they won't say that because the institutes have taught them that you're supposed to be in the dungeon, moaning and groaning. Remember what Pastor said about the Christians? That they moan and always coughing up something, sick and getting sicker. Okay, so let's go over to, let's go to verse 11. Verse 11. It says, Science Today, another one. This was December 2009. Now that this come out, they got a new eye infection. So these infections are really attacking the whole body. You know, no man is safe. Even though, you know, you seek safety in the places where the institutes tell you. You know, the institutes tell you that you need to have a plasma screen in every room in your house. The Great Witness says, don't go plasma, you know, go back to basics. Don't go bacteria. Go to the way that Yahweh says will keep you in true peace, true joy, and true abundance. Praise Yahweh. And at this time, if you'd all please stand, I'd like to turn the class over to the great Kahan, Michael Hawkins. Praise Yahweh.
Bless you. Shabbat Shalom. Please be seated, man. You got your books. We got to start off on verse 45. verse 45. We're going to jump to Yachanan Mark 10, verse 42. Yeshua called to them and said, you know that those who are recognized as rulers, and he was talking about, he says, these were the priests. If you remember the apostle Shaul, he went to the high priest. And as the Khan was bringing out, these priests were priests, but they were not priests of Yahweh, of course. And they weren't teaching the people. They weren't bringing these laws out to them. Now, if there was a money maker, like say one of them owned a kosher store where they could make money, then they'd push eating kosher, and this kind of stuff. But they made up their own laws and their own rules as time went on. And the apostle Shaul, he was raised up as a Pharisee, and there's no telling how many different things went on during that time. That's going to be the great thing about it, is we're actually going to be able to learn the history of the earth, the real history, actual true history of mankind's history of what went on. And one day we'll be able to see all of these things and actually see what took place, and actually see these things taking place like a movie on the screen, and you see these things right before our eyes, and we'll actually be able to see, Yahweh's plan in action, and see the things that actually went on behind the scenes, because that's why, in the scriptures you see things written, but not everything. You have to read in between the lines. You have to think upon Yahweh's law to really see and know what went on in certain things. But Yahweh will reveal all of these things to us. He says He will. So the apostle Shaul here, he went before the high priest. Remember, let's see in verse 45. He says, "Now these were the priests. If you remember Shaul, the apostle Shaul, he was a Roman soldier. But who did he get his orders from? He went to the priest, the high priest. In fact, the high priest. He had direct contact with the Roman soldiers because the soldiers of the army, if you remember, stood on their part. Remember what the prophet Daniel said, that he doesn't have an army. The Pope doesn't have an army, but he had all the armies in the world at his beckoning at any time he needs it. This is what Daniel showed. And so Shaul, being a Roman soldier then, he had access, and he was up in ranks. He was an influential man, and he went higher than most of his age, and he had access to the high priest himself. And you can see the fact that to go to the high priest and to have that type of contact with that man of that position at that time. Now remember, they weren't the high priest of Yahweh, but they would buy themselves into these offices. And so, he was doing their bidding, and so because he was doing their bidding, and he was such a great Roman soldier, he had influences, and he could actually go to these people and make friends with them and so forth. And so this is why he got his power. This is how he got his power and the influence that he had when he went out. He could do these things that he did. He proved himself worthy. Now, when Yeshua called him, he turned him the opposite way, and then he had to prove himself worthy, and he had to study these things. You remember, he went off for 3 years to study, to find out, to prove all these things to himself, and be prepared before he ever began his ministry. Okay, so lots of study and preparation has to go into these things. And of course, we know since Yeshua called him, then Yeshua was working with him as well, giving him that understanding. So in verse 47, it says, the Pharisees in the army, the Roman army, were the same. In fact, at that time, the Pharisees had taken over almost all of that country. If you ever study those maps of the tribes, it says, you'll see this. It shows the territories that they had control of. And they said that Rome, but when you talk about Rome got its orders from the high priest. And the high priest, they got their orders from the Pharisees, who were the strongest religion they had, the majority of the people. And they had control of that temple big time. And they also had control of Rome at that time as well. Okay? Now, remember, we're talking about Rome and Roman law. See if we can see us here. Rome. This is the Roman law. It says the Roman law is a legal system of ancient Rome. The development of the Roman law comprises more than 1,000 years. So it goes way back. This Roman law, which was by the Emperor Justinian, his code, also served as a basis for legal practice in continental Europe. Now, if you got to remember, okay, in Europe, this is where the popes had such big influence, okay? That's why when the European Union got together and stuff, why he was pushing so much for Christianity to be the religion of Europe, okay? Because he had such a big sway on them before. And this Roman law is still in effect in most other colonies of European unions. Historically, Roman law also denotes the legal system applied in most of Western Europe. In Germany, Roman law practice remained longer, having been the Holy Roman Empire. Thus, the great influence upon the civil law systems in Europe. Moreover, the English and notice, North American common law are also influenced by Roman law, notably in the Latinate legal glossary, which is all these Latin terms that they use, to designate the different things in their code, in their legal code system. Roman law today. Today, Roman law is no longer applied in legal practice, they say. However, even where the legal practice is based on a code, so even though they don't have the actual, the way it was originally set up, it's still in their codes and so forth, and they still practice Roman law. I don't know why they say they don't, but it's based on a code. Many rules deriving from Roman law apply. No code completely broke with the Roman tradition. So I don't know why they say it's not being practiced. It is. Rather, the provisions of Roman law were fitted into a more coherent system and expressed in the national language. In other words, just like anything else, when Rome took over, the Romans went in, they took over a certain area, they incorporated what they wanted upon the people, and they would take from that people what they wanted as well and mix in with their Roman system. That's why it's such a mixture. It's like Babylon. It goes all the way back. All that's a continuation. Now, it says, for this reason, knowledge of Roman law is indispensable to understand the legal systems of today. You've got to understand Roman law. They study Roman law, as it says. Thus, Roman law is often still a mandatory subject for law students in civil law jurisdictions. So you have to study Roman law in order to understand the legal system today, because the codes are still there, and the world is still being ruled by this Roman system. Okay, because the Holy Roman Empire is no longer called the quote-unquote Holy Roman Empire, but that empire still exists. And remember, all of those beasts that Daniel talked about, those are all incorporated in what we see today as this Roman system. Now, Pastor goes on and he says, let's see, he was reading from Mark 10, in verse, he continues with verse 42. And he says, you know that those who are recognized as rulers over the Gentiles. Now, if you think this word Gentiles, this usually conjures up in your mind that these were non-Jews, as the people say, right? But that's not what this scripture is talking about. Now, that's what the Catholic Church would teach today, that if you're not a Catholic, you're a heathen. And if you're a heathen, then you deserve to die, and they deserve to kill you. Okay? That's what the Catholic Church teaches. This is from the Catholic Encyclopedia. All right? Paganism. Out of the Catholic Encyclopedia, straight from it. Paganism in the broadest sense includes all religions other than the true one revealed by God. And in a narrower sense, all except Christianity, Judaism, and Mohammedanism. You got that? It includes all other religions other than the one true religion. And in a narrow sense, it includes all except Christianity, Judaism, and monotheism, the Muslims. Now, I got a question to ask. If Christianity, which is supposed to be the true faith of the Roman Catholic Church, If that's so, then why do they exclude the Jews and the Muslims and call them not non-pagans? Okay. If a pagan is supposed to be someone outside the church, why do they include them in here as saying that a pagan is anyone outside of these three faiths: Christianity, Judaism, and the Muslims? Of course, the reason is because they're all part of the Catholic Church. Okay? They actually invented these religions. Because, you know, when we think about Jews, it's not, the word Jew is not even in the Bible. You know, it didn't actually exist within the original King James 1611 version. You know, it came in at a later time. But, you know, Yahweh calls them the House of Yahweh, and the Yadaim is the proper pronunciation, not the Jews. The Jews became a contentious term that they use for these people against the true believers. Now he goes on, and Pastor says, he continues to read, and he says, as rulers over the Gentiles, okay? Now the point he's heading towards. Now we're not to be as rulers like they are over the Gentiles, okay? But this word Gentiles, he said, he's not talking, the Apostle Shaul here wasn't talking about, Yeshua speaking. Yeah, it was with Yeshua. He wasn't speaking about, talking about people, he was talking about people who were not of the faith and following him, not following Yeshua. And that included almost everybody in the world at that time. Okay? And you got to remember, too, when he talks about the world was a Roman Empire at that time. Okay? And the thing is Yeshua and his disciples did not go out to the whole world at that time. Remember, he told them, he says, you go only to the lost tribes. That's when you go after. Those who have fallen away and are still striving to overcome and so forth, go to them, and those who will hear you, bring this message of peace. Now, the word Gentiles in the Hebrew is goy, G-O-Y, or goyim, G-O-Y-I-M is a plural, but it simply means just someone who had a different belief. Because the world thinks about Gentiles, you know. In fact, in the King James, it says Greek and Gentile. And so, you know, it's kind of like a redundant term almost. But it's talking about those who actually, in Hellenist Greeks, those were actually, you know, people who believed in Yahweh and so forth. But the thing is that these people, Yahweh's people were mixed in with all of these other people. But they knew Yahweh, but they weren't of the house of Yahweh. They weren't fully practicing everything that the house of Yahweh taught. But they did believe some of these things and hung on to some of these things. And this is why you had all of these different assemblies mixed all over the place. And so what Yeshua as the Messiah came to do is to point them all out and say, look, you must come together. You are supposed to be of the house of Yahweh. And you remember the Apostle Shaul had this too. You remember he said, one of you can't say I'm of Shaul, another one can't say I'm of Keith, and the other one can't say I'm of Apollo, and so forth. You know, he says, you must be all as one. You're all of the Messiah. You must come together as one, and be together as one, and worship Yahweh as one complete body, and be the body of Messiah. There can't be any separation. But that's what they did. If you remember here, Pastor says one of them, he's talking about some books, worldly books, and he says one of them will talk about language. That this word, the Gentiles, means people of different language. He says, well, that's Yahweh is. He says, I know your worldly books are going to tell you that this is someone of another nation or something like that. He says, but one of them will say language. It's people of different languages. He said, which is true. Yahweh divided the languages so that there was a division in the people. But what he's talking about here is what he says is that they don't believe the Scriptures. A Gentile is one who didn't believe the Scriptures. Now, they'll try and say that is someone of a different language. But when you look in the Scriptures and you look up like in Genesis 11, okay, when it says that the earth was divided, the people, Yahweh allowed the languages to be confused, he doesn't say anything about separating them into different races. He just simply said that the languages were confused. And that just simply meant that they spread out in different parts of the earth, and spoke different languages. So the people who spoke one certain language would stick together in one area. Another group would stay over here and so forth. Okay, but it had nothing at all to do with races, like the world wants to try and make you believe. And that's Satan's attempt to divide the people. Yahweh says, be at one. You know, we're going to come up to the Day of Atonement, to be at one with Yahweh. And to be at one with Yahweh means you love your neighbor as yourself and you love Yahweh. Yeshua said, all the 613 laws hang on these two laws. Love Yahweh with all your heart, soul, and might, and love your neighbor as yourself. Because that comprises every law that there is. And that brings you together as one. To be as one, like we just covered on the Feast of Trumpets, you know. To be together as one. Atonement, okay? So that we can have this love within our hearts and our minds, the love for Yahweh and the love for our neighbor. And this is what brings us together. Because you can't be at one with Yahweh if you don't have love for your neighbor. It just don't work. Now, when they sent these people out, remember they grabbed the people, they took them, they sent them to Babylon, they arrested them. This is what the Apostle Shalom was doing, arresting them in Jerusalem and send them off to Babylon to train them. And they sent them to the priests to be taught in their higher schools of learning, you know. And these schools of higher learning, you know, we have the same thing today, and they teach competition in business. You know, competition, that's not Yahweh's way. Okay? In Yahweh's kingdom, there could be 1,000 shoe stores all within one city block. No one's going to be competing against one another. Okay? Competition is Satan's way because she wants to compete against one another and see who can reach the top and have the biggest business and all the money and so forth. But resurrect a dead man, a dead billionaire, and ask him what he's got. The man's going to come up naked when he's resurrected. He's not even going to have any clothes on. So what did the $1 billion do for him? Maybe he had a $1 million suit when he was buried, but by the time the man's resurrected, that's going to be destroyed. You see, something in this world, these things in the world doesn't last. It's not anything that we should be shooting for. Yahweh says we need to go for the kingdom and understand these things that he wants to try and teach us so we can have all the things, because he wants to give us the whole universe as our inheritance. And so these schools of higher learning, you know, it goes back to the time of the Egyptians and the Hebrews. The Hebrews began to multiply so much that the Egyptians began to crack down on them. But the Egyptians, they were schoolmasters, they were empire owners, you know, they were business owners, and they trained and so forth and trained the Hebrews and tried to get them into this. And like Pastor says, the same kind of bondage that went on then is still going on today because people are still in bondage. It wasn't the so-called slavery that everybody experienced in the southern states. I mean, it was in the northern states too, but you know, these things, it wasn't the same type of slavery that you see in the scriptures. In the scriptures, you know, they taught these people the laws, and you know, you looked upon a slave as being a member of your own family. In fact, if he wanted to join your family, he joined and he became just like you. Remember, Abraham had a slave who was very prized. He asked Yahweh to give him the inheritance. Let the seed come forth from him. And he said, no, it's reserved for your son. You're going to have a son, and he's going to have it. And then the Roman soldier that went up to Yeshua, you know, who knew and understood the plan of the laws of Yahweh and the kingdom of Yahweh. And he says, I've got a valuable servant, you know, he's dying. Please do something, you know, heal him. Just speak the word, because I'm a man in authority. And I know all you have to do is speak the word. And as soon as you speak the word, those microorganisms can go to work, and my servant will be saved. You know, he'll be healed and he'll be all right. I know that. I realize that because I know the position that you hold. And Yeshua said, I've never seen such great understanding of how the kingdom of Yahweh operates as I have this day in this man. So this is the kind of thing that Yahweh wants to show us. It's not the competition that's found in the world. That has nothing at all to do with anything that Yahweh, you know, wants to show us. Or he actually wants us to share all these things. I mean, think about it, how unselfish Yahweh is, you know, that he's gone out on the limb and shown this to the whole universe, that I'm going to take mankind, these humans that I've made, I'm going to take them and I'm going to turn them into someone like myself. And they've got to look at it and think, you are absolutely crazy, you know. And I'm sure has caught a tremendous amount of ridicule and flack from it. But he said, nope, it's my plan. I'm going to do it. You know, he's not concerned about it because he knows he can bring it to pass. And he is. He says, just watch and see. Now, let's see, he goes on, he says in verse 67, he says, when his people found out that Yeshua was not a warmonger, they would have accepted him. And Satan would have placed him over the kingdoms, knowing his position that he held. She was willing to place him over everything under her control, of course, but he turned it down. He didn't want that. You know, he did not want that. And he said one day, which will be very soon, he says, Yeshua is going to come, because Yeshua set the example of being a servant. He's going to come. Now, he laid down his life, and he showed us that there's no greater love than to be willing to lay down your life for someone. And he's going to come, and he's going to invite us, just so that he can serve us. That's why he wants to invite us to his marriage supper, so he can actually serve us. He's going to be serving us. You know how we see at the feast when the time comes when we have the meal, like at the Seder, you know, and the pastor comes out and he serves the people, you know, and the priest assists him in that. That's what we're going to be doing at the marriage supper. Yeshua is going to want to serve us. He's desiring that. He's looking forward to that. You know, and if these laws are kept, then there's no fighting among people, because everybody has peace, because everybody serves one another and desires to serve one another. You know, and if your mind is set on serving someone else, you're going to be served. So if your mind is set on serving someone else, someone's going to be serving you. You're serving someone else, that other person's serving someone else, that person's serving someone else, that person's serving someone else. So everybody is working together to serve someone else, and no one will be without. And that's what Yahweh wants to show us. You know, that's the whole plan of Yahweh in a nutshell. Now, and he says, Yeshua said in verse 45, he says, for even the Son of Man didn't come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. You know, he didn't come here to be served. He didn't come here. See, that's what the as the world calls them, the Jews, okay, those, the Yadim who had turned, they wanted that Messiah to come and set up that kingdom, man, and just rule over their enemies and destroy their enemies and serve in power and authority. They wanted this great figure that they could look at. That's not what the prophecy said. The prophecy said the Messiah would come, he would suffer, his own people would reject him, and then later on, after he went through all of that suffering, then he would receive the glory. Okay? That's why we have to go through tribulation. That's why it says, through much tribulation you will enter into the kingdom. We have to be tried and tested. We have to suffer the persecution, because that's what's perfecting us. The glory is guaranteed. That's a guaranteed thing by Yahweh. All we have to do is show him that that's exactly what we want. And that's what we do when we're tried and tested. That's why when Pastor says, may Yahweh bless you, he's saying, may you be tried and tested. May you be tried and tested so that you will know what it's like to be perfect. Okay, so then, you know, remember now, at that time, these priests, okay, they started off the different churches and different religions, and there were strong, violent men. That's what Yeshua referred to them as violent men. And they took over the temple. And remember, Yeshua said, I don't want a house that you can build me. I don't dwell in a human house, you know, something that you can build. That's not for me. But they wanted it. And the reason why they wanted it is so they could take it over. And eventually take over with their religion. And so that's exactly what they did. So the Apostle Shaul was part of this until his conversion. But remember, when he was converted, it just went to show the fact that Yahweh can do anything. Yahweh can pull anyone out of any lifestyle that they're living. No one is such a great sinner that Yahweh can't save him. You remember he says, my ear's not heavy, nor my arm shortened, that it won't save. You know? And we look at our lives and we can see that. You know, I mean, he pulled us out of these things. But Yeshua also said, remember, to him, to whom much is forgiven, he's going to have a lot of love and a lot of appreciation for the fact that he was allowed to enter into Yahweh's kingdom. Now, when the Apostle Shaul, he was part of these violent men. Now remember, all they had to do with the 12 tribes, it was prophesied that he would be, I mean, he was from the 12 tribes, it was prophesied that they would be that way. And I'll read you something here about crusades. By the way, this is out of the Catholic Encyclopedia. It says the Crusades, the origin of the word may be traced to the cross that was made of cloth and worn as a badge on the outer garment of those who took part in these enterprises. And notice they called them an enterprise, okay? Because the Latin word for cross is crux and so forth, and this is where they got the word crusade from. Since the Middle Ages, the meaning of the word crusade has extended to include all wars undertaken in pursuance of a vow. Okay? In other words, the wars, they went to war, but in order to get them to go to war, to fight in that war, you had to take a vow. Okay? And what you did is you vowed your allegiance to the Roman Catholic Church. You heard that little drum roll? You vowed your allegiance to the Catholic Church. And this war was directed against infidels, referring to the Muslims, pagans, heretics, or those under the ban of excommunication. Okay, when you were excommunicated, excommunication, it had nothing to do with you. Okay, that's when you were banned. I mean, that was one of the worst things that could take place, and they knew that, because remember, at that time, the different villages and so forth, okay, they were under control of the church. The priests were the only ones who really had any knowledge of books and any knowledge whatsoever, any wisdom. And they made the peasants dependent upon that. You know, there was no education. They took all the books away from them and so forth. If you wanted to learn anything or needed advice or counsel, you went to the priest. And that's why when people confessed to the priest had that power and authority because he knew what was going on. He could blackmail somebody if he wanted to. And many times that was done. So to excommunicate someone meant that you were put out of that territory and no one was supposed to communicate with you. They couldn't give you any food. They couldn't give you any clothing. They couldn't give you a job. They couldn't give you housing or nothing. If they did, they could be put to death themselves. So this was the way in which they held sway over the people. Now it says the idea of crusades corresponds to a political conception. Politics, right? Politics without religion is not politics, and religion without politics is not religion. This corresponds to political conception which was realized in Christendom. This supposes a union of all peoples and sovereigns under the direction of the popes. So it's uniting all the people, all the sovereigns. Remember the sovereigns, the kings and so forth, they wanted that position of pope. These emperors wanted that position because it was a powerful thing. It was a powerful position to have. So they wanted to pull them all together and put them under the direction of the pope. This was the reason for the Crusades to go out there and do this. All crusades were announced by preaching. They would get all the people together, and the officials of the church would come out. They would preach to them and lay out their cause before them and tell them how these infidels were going out and taking away the property of the church, and desecrating the holy places. So they need to go in there and wipe these people out and take these places back to the church. And it worked. Now, after pronouncing a solemn vow, once he roused up the people, then they want to take this vow that they would do this, for the church. I'll show you this part. It says, after pronouncing a solemn vow, each warrior received a cross from the hands of the Pope or his legates, which was, of course, his representatives, and was thenceforth considered a soldier of the church. Okay? And that's how they got their power and authority. They went out. Remember, Pope didn't have, even today, the Pope doesn't have his own army. The closest thing he has, and it's only about 500 years old, I think, is the Swiss Guards. Okay? And there's several, about maybe 300 of them. But they're not even really considered as an army. They're just there for show and so forth. To show that the armies of this world pay their allegiance to the Pope. So they received this cross, they took this vow, and then they became a soldier of the church. The same exact thing that the Apostle Shaul did. Okay? And remember, when it says they went out to divide and to conquer. And that's what the Catholic Church has always done. But Yahweh says, let's see this in verse 80. He says, first off, the laws, that everybody has the laws. He says, and they're very plain. When you start adding to them, then you start adding to them and you put an interpretation on them in order to separate people and to get them on your side. And this is the way to do it. You start a rumor and then you spread the rumor. Well, someone likes to listen to gossip, you know how easy that is. And what do you say again? And then they hear the gossip coming forth, and that's exactly what they did. Even the Apostle Shaul was guilty of doing that. You know, and he confessed all of these things. And these soldiers of the church went out and conquered. And then he says, and many assemblies have been started in that manner. They creep into the houses of Yahweh and lead astray, one of the apostles said, foolish women laden with sins. But it's always laden with sins. When you do that, when you divide, that's not what Yahweh did. Yahweh made unity. There will be no divisions in the kingdom. There will be no divisions throughout the universe. In fact, no matter where you are in the universe, when it comes feast, you're coming right here to keep Yahweh's feast. Coming right back to Abelin. Praise Yahweh. Now he says, those who want to humble themselves, as Yeshua said, have a totally different attitude. They have an attitude of being a slave. And that's the attitude of Yeshua, is to be a slave. Because that's the attitude that he showed. You know, right before he died, when he knew he was going to go out to the garden and be betrayed and be turned over and have to suffer all night and be tortured, he set that example. The very last thing he put in his disciples' minds was, be a servant. May Yahweh bless your understanding. If you go ahead and stand, we'll close with prayer. Almighty Heavenly Father, Yahweh, this is Cohen Michael Hawkins. I ask them to come before you with the righteous men in your house now, Father. As we come before you, we bless you and thank you for your Sabbath day. We thank you for the great understanding and the blessing of being able to rehearse these things, Father, the sermons that our beloved pastor and overseer, that you've inspired him to bring forth, Father, to rehearse these things and put them in our hearts and our minds. We ask and pray, Father, you continue to be with us and help us as we confess our sins, to remove these things from us so that we can be reconciled before you, Father, and come before you on this Sabbath day, rejoicing and praising you and thanking you, Father, for another great and awesome day, Father, to be able to serve one another, to be able to hear your message brought forth, and to learn more how to become like your Son, Yeshua Messiah. We bless you, thank you, and praise you, and we ask these things in Yeshua's name and ask your peace upon us. Hallelujah, Yahweh.